And that's one of the things that I say in a group when someone new would come in. And I'm not one for sugarcoating. I'm not one for sugarcoating the pain that you'll go through. And that, you know, when you lose someone to suicide, it is painful. There's a whole grief process, and you have to go through it. Because if you don't go through the process of, you know, dealing with your grief, it will come out eventually. It comes out in all sorts of ways, but it will eventually come out. It may take, you know, months. It may take years, but it eventually catches up with you. And so what I always tell people is like, yes, this is very hard. It is a lot to deal with, a lot of emotions, but know that there are a lot of people that are dealing with the same thing, that you're not crazy, that a lot of your feelings that you're having, that you're processing are very normal feelings, very normal thoughts, and that as you go through, I said, it sucks right now, but as you go through your process, it will suck less and less each time.
Yeah.
And that's what my thing was like, it'll suck less. I'm just going to tell you that. It's going to suck no matter what.
Right. Yeah, that it will get.
But it does like slowly start to suck less to the point where it becomes manageable.
Right.
It becomes something that you're able to cope with and handle. And, you know.
I remember kind of telling a friend at one point, you know, I felt like I was on this major roller coaster ride. And then I was like, I feel like I'm on the kiddie ride now, you know? Like, I can handle those. Because, one, I don't like roller coasters, but, you know, it's just the wave of emotions and, like, being jerked around, and you're just like, what is going on in my world? And, you know, to a kiddie ride that's like, okay, we can do this, you know, we can get through it all. And it just, like, you know, takes, like, just going to groups and getting informed and trying to find the resources you need.
Yes, we would call that riding the wave, where you'd sit there and you'd ride these huge waves. And, you know, grief is something that is, it's not linear.
No,
and
not.
So you would go through and you're riding the wave, and you'll hit the bottom and you'll be like, oh, okay, so I start feeling better and I start going up. And you think, oh, this is good. And then something will happen that will trigger a wave of emotion that will knock you back down. And then you'll go back up. But the other part of riding the wave is that the ups and downs, as you go through your journey and you process your grief, is that the amount of lows, they get smaller, they get shorter in time. So instead of, you know, having 2 months of huge, you know, bottom low, you'll, you know, the next time it'll only be 6 weeks, and the next time it'll be 4 weeks, and then you'll start moving back up, and then you'll, you know, and it just starts to where it's, like you said, it's only little waves. It's not the big tsunamis that you're going through.
Right.
It's just little ones.
Yeah, it's so
you know,
true.
that become manageable. And plus you also learn coping mechanisms along the way, things that work for you, because not everybody has the same coping mechanisms, you know, as far as what works for them to handle their grief, their anxiety, their whatever that they're going through.
Yeah, everybody does handle it differently. When you say, you know, there's some commonalities, it sounds like, amongst the group, what are signs that you hear, or what do you hear people talk about that now that you recognize maybe in Russell, or can you share some commonalities that you hear about people who might attempt to take their life?
Well,
or do, you know?
Yeah.
Did that make sense? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Well, one of the big ones that I've noticed is the fact that they retreat from the one that is closest to them. That's like a kind of a very common thing that happens, is that where they start a fight with the one that they are closest with, because the ones that they are closest with are the ones that are probably going to be able to tell that they're off, that something is not quite right. And if they are not ready to seek any kind of help, then they'll push them away in that sense. It's just like, it's just one of those things where I can look back on it now and go, oh, okay, I see that. The self-sabotage as far as, trying to do things for the relationship to, push people away to that. And that is not just in couples. That's, I've seen that in people who have lost their family members, their siblings, parents and stuff like that. You just hear that, their children, you hear that story where they're, and sometimes it's subtle, like it's very subtle in the sense that it's not necessarily something that's happened for like a month of not talking or a week of not talking. It can just be a day, that whatever reason they pushed you away, but it's enough of a push that looking back you go, oh, I see, you were starting that fight, or you were doing that for a reason to push me away because you were hurting, and you didn't want me to see that you were hurting.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What do people also in the group, do you hear if any of them are suffering in a way that once, hold on, let me rephrase this. Have there been people in the group that have worried about taking their lives after their loved one did, or worried about themselves? And do you hear a lot of that messaging in the group, or that they thought about it, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's actually, I wouldn't say necessarily it's very common, but yes, there are people that we've worried about, myself included, in the sense that before, when I had my breakdown, you just see there's a darkness. Like for myself, I'll just speak for myself. My depression with losing Russell, I also lost not just Russell, but I lost my identity, because it was Russell and me, So all of a sudden I had to figure out what was my life without him. And that became, like, who was I? That became something that I didn't understand, I couldn't figure out, and there was just a whole level of darkness that I saw, and I understood as far as like from the perspective of like with Russell, I was like, wow, okay, I get now how you can become lost in all these thoughts. And we've talked about it before, that it's like looking into a big black hole that you can see, and like stepping like towards the edge of that big black hole, I would look and I'd be like, yeah, there's a lot of darkness and a lot of like loss there. But then realizing if I go there, then I would get swallowed up by it. So it's like learning to, for me, I was able to take the step back away from it, and seek out help and find, other people like me that were dealing with those same issues. And that has seemed to be a big theme in our group, that you lose someone like so instantly, all of a sudden, it leaves a hole, it leaves a blank spot. that you have to look at and figure out, okay, what happens now? And I think a lot of people think about their own mortality with that. And there's been a lot of people in our group that, like myself, that hadn't ever dealt with suicide before, or hadn't dealt with, some people hadn't ever dealt with that kind of a loss at all, a death at all. And so you're grieving, and how do you handle the grief process? And then not only, you're dealing with grief, you start dealing with, there's loss of sleep, there's loss of, that starts to build up all these thoughts in your head and things like that. So it is important, as I tell people in the group, it's important to talk, to get those thoughts out, whether whoever you're talking to, it doesn't matter who, but whoever you feel safe with to talk to, and be able to process those thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and what we're learning so much more now is that definitely talking actually helps process your thoughts, and to maybe make sense a little bit more of what you're just thinking and hear. And I had somebody the other day say a way that she processes just what's going on in her life is she says it out loud, even if she's by herself. If she's just by herself and she starts to feel like whatever I'm thinking right now seems a little off center, she'll just say it out loud. And she's like, it really helps me realize when those thoughts are coming out of your lips, that it's a thought, and you can move on from it.
Yes. That
it's not an event, or it may not even, it's not true, or it could just be a story for her anyway. And I just thought that was really a great way if people are interested in just simply saying things out loud, just to get that out of your head, get it out of your body, get that energy out of there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many people in our group journal.
Yes.
Like just write down thoughts. We had one lady who just, she talked about how she just wrote down whatever it was that she was thinking that day, whatever. And it didn't matter if it was just a bunch of nonsense words, it would come out. If it was a bunch of swear words, it was okay too. It was just whatever she was feeling. And then what was interesting for her is that she could look back on it months later, and you can actually see your progression. So that's the other thing about grief that we talk about, is that a lot of times you don't see, because you are in the moment, because you're in it, you don't necessarily see your progress, and so that can get upsetting. That can get frustrating.
Yeah.
And because you don't see, oh my gosh, there's progress that's happening.
Yes.
I'm actually doing better, because in the moment you might be having a downtime, so you're thinking this is never going to get better.
I love that. Yes, writing and journaling I know is so important, but the way, to go back and track it during a time when you're really struggling, to see that there's progression. And if you're not a writer, you don't want to write, then just do voice messages on your phone or something.
Right.
Yeah, just any way that you can go back and see that there is progression.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're doing the work.
Right.
Yeah. Are there other resources or tools that you use personally to kind of, I know you go to your group, is there other things that you've started doing or have done in the past to help with your own mental health?
Exercise. People always say that, but it's like one of those things that is so true.
Yes.
That actually getting up and moving. And I'm not huge on exercise, but walking is just so beneficial. Walking out in nature, even if you just go outside and you walk to a park bench and you sit there and you're outside in the sun, and to me, just getting some outside stimulants is huge, because it's a big thing as opposed to being stuck in a house or in your room or whatever.
Yeah,
that is where you can get some very dark moments.
Yes.
I think in that. So it was big for me to always be out and about. That's one of the things that when I don't feel when I'm not having a good day or whatever, it's like, okay, time to get out and get moving.
Yeah, get your body moving, kind of redirect that energy. And
yes.
Outside where there's sun and vitamin D, and even if there's not sun, it's still, those rays are coming through from behind those clouds and
yes,
absorbing oxygen,
Yes.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me, I'm also an introvert, so I don't necessarily want to be in a big crowd of people, like do a big group activity. However, just going to Target and I used to joke and say that in the early days I would go to work, do my work, and then I would get out and I would go to Target. And I would joke that I'd be like, yeah, I'm that crazy person who's hanging out in Target for 2-3 hours just wandering Target with my cart. I did a lot of retail therapy where I was just like...
yeah, but whatever, you knew what you needed to do.
Yes.
To, wasn't time to go home yet.
Yes.
Thoughts may be stewing, you're feeling off, it's gone through this awful trauma in your life, and go to Target and push the cart around or whatever. Just get your body moving and out of the home or whatever that is, just kind of creating that stagnant energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would do that. Or before, Russell and I used to be huge live music fans. So anytime I hear live music, so I would tell a friend, we would go out to eat or whatever, and it was just nice just to sit in some place and hear somebody playing or something while we're hanging out. Those are good mental breaks,
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge thing for me, is learning how to, because my mind is always going, that I needed to figure out what to do to give myself a mental break. I always heard the term 24/7, and I never believed anyone could really think about something 24/7. That's not true, until Russell died. After Russell's death, I understood what 24/7 meant, because he was my first thought and he was my last thought before I went to sleep. And then he was in my dreams. So it really was a 24/7. I didn't have a break in my mind. And I could even be working full time, doing everything, having a conversation with someone, and it would still be in the back of my mind. It would still be working there in the back of my head, no matter what. So I understood after that what 24/7 meant. So I had to figure out ways to turn that off, to calm that, so that I could give myself a mental break. And so it was sometimes doing very mundane things, that would allow me to just chill, that would allow my brain to, or it would take it somewhere else, which would be going out with friends and going to dinner or going to the movies with friends, whatever.
Well, it sounds like you have some then and now, there's some great resources to help you get through that hard time. And, people are going through something right now, they know that they can find meetings. And I know certain websites that they can go to around suicide.
Yes.
And, walking and exercise and journaling and, even just going to have dinner or see music if that's what you're interested, just to be with a friend. Yeah, those are all really good tools and resources.
Yes. And getting sleep. Which is a huge one, which was a hard one for me because, like I said, my mind never shut off. So I suffered from insomnia. I still suffer from insomnia now, to some degree, so not as bad. But in the early days, I would, sometimes get 2-3 hours sleep. If I got 3 hours sleep, if I got 4 hours sleep, that was huge during a day. And that's what I lived off of for a couple of years at least. Yeah. That's the way life was. But learning to get more sleep, doing more things, that's huge.
Yeah,
Sleep is a huge one.
Absolutely.
So exercise, sleep, all big things in helping to cope with grief, helping to cope with just your mental state.
Right, yeah.
Has a huge effect on it.
It really does. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing this with us, because the more we talk about suicide, I feel like the more it breaks down that stigma, and there is, in my humble opinion, I still think there's a stigma around it.
I agree.
We just don't know enough, and when we're learning more and more every day, and and you sharing your story is, helping teach our audience, more about suicide. If you have a family member, a loved one, where they can go. So I just appreciate you being on here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's Suicide Prevention Awareness Week when we're filming this. And so we know that, like I said, there are so many resources, and we'll have some of them listed, where people can now go and get the help that they need. If you're thinking, if you have suicidal thoughts, therapy, and even, I love this. I've heard so much about group therapy recently. Even if it's scary for you to want to go out and just seek help on your own, the group therapy that's another resource that people can use. And there's just something about hearing people speak on others being there for them,
Yes.
that I think is super important. So yeah,
it's very. I think group therapy is. It's great in that you find someone who that you can connect with, and then you can not feel alone. Because I think that's the one thing about suicide, is that I think the person with suicide, they feel alone. And so if you cannot feel alone, if you can make a connection, and it also goes the same thing for survivors of suicide. They have they feel alone also. So if you can find a group that you feel comfortable with, a group of people, it doesn't have to be a group, it's like a normal group. It could just be a group of friends. That, so that you don't feel alone.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us today at Speak as One, and I want to thank Stacy for being here with us and sharing her own mental health journey with us and the resources and tools that she's used. We will have those listed below, and the way that you can help support us is by hitting like, subscribe, or share with your friends. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.